History has taught us that a thirst for war remains. Nations are in perpetual state of readiness for war. Armed conflicts in Africa range from tribal fights and ethnic cleansing to war between countries in the name of land, tribe, economy, power, politics, and religion. And then there is a constant background noise of slaughters. The continent is blemished with the scars and wounds of wars past and present. One of the tragedies of war is the issue of refugees. The 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees defines a refugee as someone who, owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular group or political opinion, is outside of the country of his nationality and is unable to, or owing to such fear, is unwilling to avail himself of the protection of that country. The refugee camp at Kakuma on the Kenya-Sudan border does not make news headlines anywhere in the world. Yet, it remains a constant reminder of the colossal cost of armed conflict that has rocked most of continental Africa. The Kakuma refugee camp was established in 1991 to accommodate the lost boys of South Sudan fleeing conflict and violence. Over the years, however, the camp has taken in refugees from many other African countries, including South Sudan, Sudan, Somalia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Eritrea, Uganda, Tanzania, and Congo-Brazzaville. Currently, the camp houses more than 170,000 multi-ethnic refugees.
There was a conflict in South Sudan. We started at Juba, and people started coming, escaping from there, escaping killings, and every day about 300 to 400 refugees from Sudan started coming here, and they have been settled here. And to date now, from 15th of December up to now, there are over 26,000 refugees just in this area. Every day, 300 to 400 people.
A number significantly larger than what the facility was originally built for. The camp is administered by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, and falls under the jurisdiction of the Government of Kenya, which, after the adoption of the Kenyan Refugee Act of 2006, exercises its control through the Department of Refugee Affairs, DRA. Kakuma, meaning nowhere in Swahili, epitomizes its remoteness. The refugee camp is accessible by just one highway on the Kenyan Northern Corridor. Swept by frequent dust storms, ravaged by high daytime temperatures and communicable diseases such as malaria and cholera, and infested with venomous reptiles, this semi-desert region is grossly inhospitable to human habitation. The Salesians of Don Bosco began their activities in the Kakuma refugee camp in 1992. Over the years, their work among the refugees steadily grew in reach and scope, and now they have a full-fledged technical center, imparting trainings in trades like carpentry, masonry, welding, motor vehicle mechanics, plumbing, electrical, tailoring, dressmaking, computer, and secretarial work. There is also a full-fledged English language coaching center and another for providing training in agriculture. Ever since their arrival, the Salesians have worked untiringly and have contributed their might to bettering the life of the refugees. The camp is a small city of huts roofed with tin sheets, tents, and mud structures. Living inside the camp is equally prison and exile. Once admitted, refugees do not have the freedom to move about the country. Inside this small city, at the edge of the desert, children are born. They age into adulthood, and their hope fades to resignation. At Kakuma, the refugees are almost completely dependent on international humanitarian assistance for food and other supplies. The scarcity of food in the region is aggravated by shortage of water and unsuitability of land for farming purposes. While there has been a constant influx of refugees, aid has largely stagnated or dwindled, stretching available supplies dangerously thin and pushing rampant malnutrition to life-threatening levels. No effort is spared by Don Bosco to organize distribution of food and nutrition to the refugees, aided by generous contributions from various agencies. Availability of clean water in the camp has been woefully inadequate, and this has been a sore point for the refugees for several years. Some refugees trek long distances to reach the nearest water outlet outside the camp, but when they arrive, they are often prevented from drawing water. Refugee camps are invariably overcrowded, and housing is of inferior quality. UN tents offer them temporary shelter, but they don't hold up long in the harsh sun, wind, and rain. Most of the refugees live in handmade huts built of sticks, mud, metal scrap, and discarded packing materials. Due to an ongoing wave of incoming refugees, the camp lacks the necessary funding to keep up with the demand for new shelters. Neglected by the government, housing is a major problem for the native Turkanas as well. Aware of the situation, the Salesians of Don Bosco occasionally assist them in building houses. Other problems worsened by the influx of refugees include hygiene and sanitation in the camp. High-density camps present higher risks of disease transmission. Brickworks near the settlement leave behind huge excavations that fill with water in the rainy season, turning them into mosquito breeding sites and potential death traps for children. Fixing these problems have proven to be difficult because of scarce funds.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for loving me.
A large section of the camp's population is very young, comprising children and young adults. As the camp became progressively multi-ethnic, it was important to avoid potential conflict situations and ensure cultural integration. Herein comes the need for sports and cultural activities as catalysts for social harmony. Don Bosco organizes different cultural programs among the students which encourage them to value and appreciate each other's culture and use the cultural diversity as a means to shape their future. These programs not only build friendship between students, but are also an excellent opportunity to convey important messages to spectators and the wider community.
I really appreciate the work which the Salesians are doing in this camp. They are trying to address so many issues, also even to bring the children together and the youth, the vocations training which is going on here, targeting the young people. This is something wonderful. I was here yesterday and I saw how happy these young people are being together and learning to live together even though they come from diverse communities. I could see really that unity in diversity, and this is what the Don Bosco Fathers, the Salesians, are giving to these young people.
Don Bosco Vocational Training Center, Kakuma, DBVTC, is the sole provider of formal technical education to the refugees and the host community. The students undergo 1 year's training and appear for the Kenya government's examination conducted by the Directorate of Industrial Training to obtain a formal government certificate, as well as Don Bosco and UNHCR certificates. These certificates are of great value to the refugees as they go back to their respective countries or when they get to emigrate to Europe, America, and Australia. Interestingly, in South Sudan, a large cross-section of budding entrepreneurs and those skilled in the English language are alumni of Don Bosco VTC, Kakuma. Many of them come back to their alma mater to hire additional hands for their growing businesses and in some cases to qualify themselves further. With a population of over 170,000, the Kakuma refugee camp urgently needs more institutions to provide good quality education, both academic and technical, given that the majority of the refugees are young people who are eager to equip themselves for a self-reliant future. Don Bosco VTC needs to open more centers and introduce training in additional trades according to the current demand and the needs of the refugee population. So far, some 15,000 students have passed through our centers. In 2013, over 2,000 students were trained at the Don Bosco VTC Kakuma. The Salesians want to be of service to many more young people and are always looking to find the necessary resources to open new centers and introduce new trades.
As I was telling you, we work and sustain the mission, which is very difficult in a refugee situation, and especially here at Kakuma, where everything has to come from 450 kilometers away. When the international community supports the refugees through the NGOs, we are able to train many refugees in various trades. The NGOs were supported by the international community. They bring in orders and this helps us to sustain our training for the refugees and sustain them with some income which will enable them to have better living conditions.
As the sun sets across the vast continent, the Kakuma refugee camp plunges into darkness. There is no electricity here. Clearly, for the children, it is a challenge to study under such circumstances. Don Bosco has provided several families with solar-powered LED lights. However, the goal of bringing light to every home is a long way off, because the initial cost of these solar-powered LED lights is very high. Employment opportunities for refugees are virtually non-existent, as they are forbidden to seek employment outside the camp. In addition to skilling the youth of the camp, Don Bosco has been able to employ several young people in their training centers.
Both the refugees and the host community means the Turkana people, are the ones who are learning the trade and also who are doing this work.
Violence between refugees of different ethnicities crammed together is a persistent problem. Sexual violence remains a nightmare, with hundreds of cases reported every year. One way of insulating the young from rampant vices is to keep them usefully engaged. It is sad to see so many lives wasted away, wandering around the camp doing nothing. Kakuma refugee camp is a challenge to the entire Salesian congregation, which is engaged in the service of the youth.
They are from Malakal, a city, a town which was totally ruined. Homes destroyed. It is worse than after a storm. And they are all just scattered. He does not know where his father is, where his mother is.
In my place, I was staying in Nuba Mountain, and I was posted as a soldier. I have taken to the field to be trained for 1 week and a half, so that to be taken to the war for the fighting. Then after that, I went for the war, 2002, the last final war. It is a time I lost my hand and also my eyes.
Don Bosco is not merely an NGO located in the heart of Kakuma refugee camp. The Salesians of Don Bosco are actively involved in the spiritual welfare of the people, especially the Catholics. Daily and Sunday masses are organized in several parts of the camp. Children are properly instructed in faith. The sacraments are administered after careful preparations. Popular devotions are kept alive and the fathers keep moving around the camp, sustaining the faithful in their faith and encouraging them to face life with hope and courage. The bishop visits the churches to administer sacraments and arranges relief programs for the people. The refugees' natural talents for singing and dancing make their liturgical celebrations very lively and interesting. The prayers, otherwise repeated mechanically, comes alive in their life context when they call God. Father, give us this day our daily bread. Give us the grace to forgive. Deliver us from evil. One of the oldest civilizations on earth, the indigenous peoples of Turkana, have lived isolated in Kenya's remote northwest for thousands of years. They are pastoralists and least literate. They depend heavily on relief food and medicine. Poorly sheltered and exposed to harsh climate, they are victims of many diseases. Relations between the refugees and members of the Turkana ethnic groups have been strained by several violent incidents. The focus of the international community is on the refugees, and so they should not be the last Mohicans of East Africa. The solutions educate and empower these poor and marginalized people through relief works. With world attention and charity being directed towards other crisis spots in the Middle East, resources for Kakuma are drying up, and it is impacting the refugees who found sanctuary there. It is clear that more must be done to protect the ever-increasing refugee population here and provide them with adequate supplies. The people in Kakuma, like all refugees, seek no pity but social justice. And without social justice for everyone in this world, none of us can or should live at peace with ourselves. Victims of politics, corruption, and avarice, refugees are nothing more or nothing less than everyday people, caught in a vortex of violence not of their making. And those who suffer most are always the children.